Gracias, buen día. Voy a hablar en español, así que si quieren usar los audífonos está bien para mí. Me da mucho gusto estar aquí con ustedes. Es un lugar maravilloso. Dominicana es un país muy bonito que nos abre sus puertas. Nada más caminar desde el hotel hasta esta...
Just to walk through this garden, one feels energy because of all that greenery, especially for me, who comes from Mexico City. I really love it here. My task today is to try and put some figures to understand the importance of remittances and of migration for the region and, in fact, for the whole world, and also to try and find together with you some opportunities to improve financial inclusion for remittances of these migrants and what opportunities we have to make this happen. You may have heard this since many years, that is how to make remittances contribute to development, to turn from current expenses to investment. We've heard that year after year in all our countries, how this major flow of money is coming to our countries, but never takes the next step to use its leverage and invest. At the IDB, we've been working on this for the last 20 years with the authorities, the central banks of the different countries, to have better information for decision making. So I'll give you a brief overview of what we've been working on. You can also find it on the webpage of the bank with the studies we publish regularly. First, why is this topic important, not only for the region, but in the whole world? It has a lot to do with these migrants. 7.3% of the total population of LAC is migrating. The majority of migrants are in the U.S., in the green lines for Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. They're practically all in the U.S. For South America, they're more distributed over different regions. The main destination of the diaspora of Latin America are the other Latin American and Caribbean countries within South America. That's specific for South America. When we say 7.3% of the LAC population, we'll say, well, which means 1 out of 10. But it's 45 million people, 45 million Latino Americans, and Caribbeans who don't live in their country, to leave their families behind, to look for opportunities abroad. And this is increasing when you go downwards. Almost 33% of Central Americans are outside their countries, not because they want to. Well, there are different reasons why they need to leave their countries. There are economic factors. They want to improve their lives and their families' lives. Also, family reunion. They have relatives abroad. They request their relatives to come, or political crisis that oblige many migrants to leave their countries. Also natural disasters, such as in Honduras, where natural disasters force people to abandon their country of origin, and others are looking for new opportunities. Our surveys have been held for the last 14 years. Some surveys were done by the IDB, others in coordination with the national authorities. All this information shows that the main factor that determines emigration is economic factors. They need more revenues to sustain their families. That there are very high percentages of migrants who send remittances back home. That's the main reason to migrate, remittances. Remittances, consequently, are an extremely important theme. that's written about, heard about in the press, in the media. Every end of the year, the central banks, the authorities, the press say how many remittances came into the country. Impressive. Latin America and the Caribbean by the end of 2025, a total of $174 billion. $174 billion, enormous. As compared to foreign direct aid, it's not even a third party of remittances. So it's a tremendous flow of money. Mexico has very high remittances, 62 billion. The data was collected officially and projected for the end of the year. This is published during the third quarter of the year so that decisions can be made for next year's budget. So it's a gigantic flow. This is why it's so important. This is why it's published everywhere. But in relative terms, it's also an impressive amount, because if we compare it to the GDP of the countries for Latin America, well, it's too small to read. It means 2.5% of GDP. You might say that's not too much, but if you think of the financial deficit of a country, 2.5 can change the balance of payments of a country. And in Central America, the remittances compared to GDP can reach levels of 30% in Nicaragua and Honduras, and in other countries it's more than 15%. All this is impressive macroeconomically. Let's now look more closely at a lower level, at the level of the households. Our surveys show that for 72% of the families, the remittances are very important. They are the fundamental basis for the families, for the households to consume, 71%. And for 22% of the family, it's the only, or at least the main source of income. Without it, the family could not survive. And we're talking of 45 million migrants. Imagine the impact on the families back home. Here we statistically analyzed a static analysis of how remittances can fight poverty. It's always said that remittances can reduce poverty. Honduras, people in extreme poverty, who were in extreme poverty, 2.2% move up to relative poverty thanks to the remittance, and 1.4% get out of poverty thanks to the remittances, thanks to the statistics of the household service of the different central banks. Likewise, 3.7% from relative poverty moves up to no poverty. What does this mean for the other countries? This is the data for El Salvador. 2.1% of people in extreme poverty pass to no poverty, 1.4 to relative poverty. And this is what remittances do. Even so, they're cold figures, difficult to understand. In the case of Ecuador, Colombia, and Mexico, the values seem very small. Small percent, 0.3% of Mexicans move up from extreme poverty to no poverty. It seems insignificant. But if you look at the number of people impacted, things change. In Mexico, we're speaking of 2 million people, 2 million households that receive remittances that will get out of poverty, or who will move from extreme or relative poverty to no poverty. So this data shows how important remittances are, how they contribute to the benefit for the families. And now I go back to my other presentation. In our regular annual studies, we analyze the remittances, how they go up or down. Last year, we were wondering why in Mexico they were going down, while in other countries they improved by 20 to 30%. We analyzed this and we divided the analysis in two parts to understand how remittances move, both the supply, the emission, that's the number of people who leave their countries, and then the entrance of the diaspora into the countries where they emigrate to. You can see all this in the documents that we publish. Are they working full-time, half-time? Are they women or men? You know what's happening with the remittances, especially for market intelligence to make plans. There are other themes, the fluctuations of the exchange rate in Mexico. There are more remittances when there is a boom, especially if it's perceived that the exchange rate could change again. Other factors are demand. They are the most important. They're those that determine how many remittances they'll send. It's the accrued volume. That has to do with the families, the economic cycles of the families, and some other themes such as natural disasters, COVID. The year 2021 shows how remittances compensated for the decline of the economies. They increased to more than 26% in 2021. This shows how remittances remain stable over time. Everybody said that remittances would go down during COVID because migrants would be unable to move or work, but apparently the love for their families is stronger than any other factor, and remittances increased dramatically. These are the determining factors of aggregate remittances. Why does each migrant decide to send remittances or not send, and how much? The main factors are the needs of their families, but there are other factors too. We have demographic analysis of the migrants. We know their ages, how long they've been abroad, if they have dependent relatives or not, of their level of education. What happens with these migrants? Are they more or less educated? They mostly work in the primary sector. Others have more studies. Who are the beneficiaries? The spouses, the children, the parents, grandparents. Where do the remittances go? We have all this information for 14 countries, more than 28 surveys, country per country. If you're interested in a particular country, you can see it on our web pages with all details. For today, I've chosen the analysis analysis we made on the basis of several variables. That is the size, the mean of remittances, to whom they're sent and why they are sent. The total of all samples of these countries, the main expenditure is focused on spouse and children. The largest remittances are sent to the spouse and the children. Within current expenditures, there is a large component, but also for investment in savings of the family, or to buy a house or some family business, education, and others where they invested. This component also exists. And when the migrant sends for investment, the average of remittance is higher. What we do know is that there are not that many migrants that can do that. Many do it, but it's not something constant, nor very large. If we compare with the time they have been abroad, there is a variability because each migrant has their own process. Those who have been abroad for 9 years or less have a different behavior. They'll send more money to wife and children, and a lot for current expenditures also. But those migrants who have been for more than 9 years abroad, there the figures change somewhat. They're more stable, and they might even be thinking of retiring in their home country. They send larger amounts for investment for when they go back to their country of origin. The policy implications, who are the beneficiaries of the remittances, which is the main purpose of the remittances. Now the cost. The cost is something that has also been discussed for many years. The costs are less than 5%. By 2030, we'd like it to be even lower. It's always good for migrants to have a perception of this. But we should, above all, connect remittances with other products that would give more leverage to the revenues that the families receive. Very quickly, some information in the documents we have. To what extent are they included? In the case of bancarization for emitters, more than 50% in almost all countries. In the case of recipients, they have less bank accounts than the senders. What is the problem? Those have a bank account in the countries where they live, mainly the US, and the recipients have bank account in their countries of origin, Honduras, Guatemala, Dominican Republic. This difference creates a lot of noise also. It's difficult to communicate, to combine this data. There is a contagion effect in Bolivia and other countries, which means that if migrants have bank instruments, will this serve as inspiration for the receiving families? Will there be more bank accounts among the families that receive remittances?
Familia cada vez que los migrantes envían estas remesas. Algunas de las cosas.
Some of the products with most demand has to do with housing. Most migrants if asked, would you buy a house if you had money, if you had credit? That's what the majority answered. But to turn this into a reality is more difficult. Or funds for retirement, there's also an important demand there. The Mexican government launched a pilot project in this regard to determine whether they to see the possibility of opening saving accounts for retirement. Unfortunately, this project didn't work out, but there is a lot of demand for retirement remittances. And about demand, this is my last slide. It's interesting in terms of digital operations. The migrant wants to be able to make their own decisions about the purpose of the remittances. They may be sending money for saving for a house, and then the receiver spends it on something else. So we see that payments from abroad are too small as compared to the purposes that the migrants are sending money for. The problem is due to the fact that such advice, such consulting services don't exist. Most of them live in the US. They know how to pay for facilities and public services because they pay it online through the bank, while in their country of origin, those services don't always exist, although most people have a smartphone, but it's not enough. And to end my presentation, some thoughts on this, because food for thought, because your alliance, I think, is ideal to create a change in the culture of remittances, to make remittances more adequate to the needs of recipients. If we think in macroeconomic or family terms, we know that there is non-satisfied demand. Why are certain products not developed? These are my reflections that I want to transmit to you. In the flow of remittances, in the transfer of remittances, there are many non-banks. There's nothing bad about it because they facilitate the flow and reduce flows, but they are not full part of the financial systems and consequently cannot offer certain financial services that would be more inclusive. As we saw, the volumes are gigantic, enormous. If you look for benefits for your institution of those $145 billion that come to the region, how to take advantage of it. And there, a lot is still to be done. We think in particular of legal barriers that make it more difficult to make financial services available to the households in the different countries. Of course, without always in full respect of regulations in microfinance, this is possible now. People have access the barriers have been changed into opportunities thanks to microfinance. I think we could do it also for migrants. A crucial theme for me and in general is that we have a partial view of the remittances, remitters on the one hand and senders on the other hand, with little communication between both. And the providers of financial services don't know how to deal with this. How do I design a financial product, a financial service, where the origin of the resources is over there with a different institution, and here how can I provide services to another kind of entity? That's difficult. We have to change this perspective and think transnationally. They're not two separate families. It's one same family. One part is abroad and one is in the country of origin. As soon as we start thinking of a family as a unified entity, we'll start thinking differently on how to provide financial services within the context of remittances. And this can be used to develop financial products and services. I repeat, this information is available in the publications of the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB. They're published once a year. They can be interesting for your business strategies. It also shows what happened last year and what might happen next year in terms of remittances. All this information is assembled by the IDB on the basis of data from the central banks of the different countries of the region. And all this has enabled us to improve the understanding of the remittances phenomenon. So we have our spring report available on the IDB blog. In the annual report, we say what happened last year, what mistakes were made, what corrections should be made. We have a very low percentage of mistakes, although some countries have been more difficult to assess than others. And we have a flagship that is a document that is coming soon to guide policies in the field of remittances. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.